whoever something.
Yeah.
We get to see our interns.
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
thank you. And a page.
Okay.
So far, so good.
We surviving. Yes.
Very.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So all summer into the fall or just summer or?
And it's for me.
Yeah, I started in September. We're on the forest system at Westgate, so we have like kind of the extended summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially here when like September is still summer.
I know, yeah. You know, my friends who get out in May, I'm like, you're kind of just waiting around for the sun.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
So true.
Yeah. So started recording on automatically. Steven told me that he was going to join online as well. I haven't seen him yet, but we have 4 months, so.
Is there no more that we have?
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay,
Is Brian coming?
I would think, yes. Yeah, we can wait a couple minutes for him and then
Yeah.
we can give an introduction and we can start and then do it. Whatever you want.
Yeah, so those are some additional proposed amendments to the landscape chapter. That are responsive to comments we received. Sure.
This is me having a hard week.
Stay away.
First one today? It's the first one.
No,
I mean, that's pretty good. It's the first one.
Yeah, just late in the day.
Is that work or kids?
We had a planned outage all night tonight.
Okay.
I didn't have to leave, but something was wrong. So
Yeah.
just preparing for that.
Yeah.
So Jim works for Tanner Electric, which is one of our 2 utility providers in the state.
The power outage I didn't know.
At least the planned ones are probably a little easier than, because you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not-
We know it's coming, so
Yeah.
which is why I'm doing that one, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to make it later tonight.
Oh, geez.
Well, we appreciate you being here.
I'm getting fired up, just stay awake all night, right?
Yeah, it's like,
Start thinking.
nothing better than signing regulations.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, right. Just say it out loud. Do you have to make generator at your house? Or do you not believe in generator?
I don't believe in a generator because I'm not there to take advantage of it, so.
So we do have a quorum, right? 4, but,
We've got like 30 seconds.
yeah. I don't know if you noticed, I just did today on the agenda, it says May 21st minutes and they're actually, what was attached and what it is June 18th. So that was an error on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I totally would have read that and said June, so thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's correct in there.
It's correct in the packet, we just were going back and forth on when our last meeting was, and at one point we thought May, so.
6:30, we can let our guests in.
Yeah, just Sheree,
Okay.
maybe Stephen will be joining, we'll keep an eye out for him, so we should be going. Just sound check and stuff. Sheree, can you hear us and see us if you want to?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
All right, well, we will call to order the planning commission at 6:30. We'll do the roll call for Commissioner Pereira, Commissioner White,
Present.
Commissioner Rovers,
Present.
Commissioner Buchanan,
Present.
and Commissioner Teal. And it looks like we will open our public hearing at 6:30 for public comment for non-agenda items. So there's no one here in person for any reason. But is there anyone online for something that is not on the agenda?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
Then we will close the public hearing for item 2 at 6:30 as well. And we will go on to Item number 3, the approval of minutes from June 18th, 2025. Do commissioners have any questions, comments, or any changes they made on that? Or just a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 18th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. So now we will go on to item number 4, the introduction and public hearing and recommendation, hopefully for city council for the NBMC landscape amendment. And we'll turn it over to Scott to present.
Yeah, so let me introduce to you both of our insurance. So Chase Rigg and Paige Robbins are both students at Western Washington University. Chase is in his final year, Paige is in her 3rd year, and they're both planning students. So following the footsteps of Jamie and I, and Caitlin. So we have a long line of tradition here at the city, and super happy to have them. Chase has been working on landscape regulation amendments and then also some subdivision regulations that will be coming to you guys later. Paige has been working on these zoning amendments before you tonight and signing standards with Caitlin. So I'm super happy to have them. They've been a real blessing to the city and helped us get a lot more done than what we would have otherwise. So the first item on the agenda tonight, Chase has really led the effort on. So I'm going to let him introduce it, and we'll be happy to help answer questions, but he's kind of the one in charge. Turn it over to you.
All right. Well, the following amendments pertain to Title 18 of the North Bend Municipal Code with regard to landscaping. The purpose of these amendments is to remedy code that may no longer be necessary, solve existing language conflicts, promote sustainable landscaping methods, and simplify the city's landscape maintenance assurance device. Starting off, we are proposing to either modify or remove the existing Type 4 landscape buffer requirements that are currently set at 150 feet. This buffer currently applies to one property and aims to prevent the public from witnessing disturbing occurrences that may occur at a farm. The property owner, Mr. Stringfellow, provided comments to emphasize this purpose, and we remain in agreement with him and will continue to support residual barriers in the farm. However, since the one farm pertains to currently retains a buffer that consists of thick brush and tree coverage and utilizes the Snoqualmie Valley Trail, the existing code may no longer be used. Because of this, we're proposing to either amend the code, this would lower the length requirement to replicate the existing buffer length property contains, and clarify that it only applies to private properties, not Meadowbrook or Tollgate farms, or alternatively, remove this section entirely. Another amendment contains alterations to our landscape maintenance bond, and would take the reduced agreement period from 3 years down to 1. The bond is in place to ensure the longevity of landscaping and address any defects that may occur. During this process, the city often ends up resolving disputes that occur between parties, which takes up time. Lowering this duration would mean that the city would have to spend less time on these disputes, which would free up resources and for other projects. The year change is reflective, as research from other cities show that they often incorporate a 1 to 2 year period rather than our 3 year period requirement. Additionally, to free up further city resources, we are proposing to raise the fee in lieu limit from $5,000 to $7,000, so that less projects require the bonds in the first place. Further amendments address the height requirements listed for fencing within the corner line of setback. This is purely just to address a language conflict that currently exists, as one section currently states that any fencing above 3.5 feet must fall behind the setback area, whereas another section lists the maximum height within the setback area to be 6 feet. This adjustment would lower the 6 feet requirement to 3.5 feet, removing the conflict. Additionally, a visual graphic explaining how the setback requirements work will be added to help readers understand. Following comments from the Snoqualmie tribe, we are proposing additional amendments to encourage the use of sustainable landscaping methods and the preservation of existing plant life. These amendments include additions to the section's purpose to promote the use of native drought-resistant species and detail how sustainable landscaping can positively impact the city. In addition, amendments are proposed to clarify irrigation requirements and encourage the use of rain barrels into new developments. Finally, we are proposing amendments to alter reference figures and zones within Title 18 to be consistent with the 2024 comprehensive plan updates. This includes altering references to the designated agricultural lands map to be correct in title and figure number. That is all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from staff? Or-
Just to note, there are the additional amendments, I think everybody has those now, and the revisions that you didn't previously see in your packet are shown in the yellow packet.
Perfect, thank you so much. This is the public hearing, but we're going to, I'll turn it to commission to ask staff any questions before we open the public hearing, so that might answer some questions that the public might have as well. So there are any clarifying questions from the commission?
One question that I have is that urban growth boundary, we don't have any agricultural lands within the urban growth boundary.
No, not within our urban growth boundaries, just outside of that, so it's a little bit of an odd situation. You generally don't provide regulation outside of your jurisdiction, but
Yeah,
what this does is provide regulation inside our regulation.
so it's just the three agricultural land spots that are indicated on the slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
In regards to the reducing the 3-year maintenance period to 1, do we know why 3 years was set in the first place? I mean, it seems like 1 year is reasonable to me, but somebody at some point said 3 years was reasonable. Does it do either?
Yeah,
Any idea
and
why?
just the intent of providing longer term coverage. I think that the overall purpose to reduce it though is that the essential purpose of a bond is to make sure that you're turning over something to somebody in the condition that it should be turned over in. And a 1-year bond will address construction and planting defects. So you're wanting to make sure that you're not handing over something that was improperly installed. But when you go to 3 years, that's getting into long-term maintenance, and it becomes more of a, was it watered properly, or was it pruned properly? And that's really not something the city should be involved in. So the idea is, let's hand it off at the point at which it's ready to hand off, and then the city is no longer deemed to be involved. So,
I apologize, sorry to join. This definitely addresses, like landscaping, but does this also cover infrastructure like sidewalks?
No, those are
Curbs or something that?
Those require,
Put in? Okay.
yeah, under our code, those require a 2-year bond.
Okay.
And that is more typical of infrastructure because sidewalks will crack over time.
Right.
So there is a need for a longer bonded period there. Similarly, we have a tree protection bond. And that, so the landscape bond is not covering retention of existing trees. Those are covered by our tree protection bond, which is for the life of the construction. So that is held all the way until the end of the construction of the homes, because that, the tree can deteriorate over time.
Yes.
I think honestly, I think a year makes a lot of sense because a lot of the time developers will be gone by the time the 3 years is up and then they're off to the next project. So it's really difficult to try to work with them in a reasonable way. But I am curious about phase development, if there's multiple phases, so is that a year from the time that they put in the landscape or is that a year from the time the project begins?
Yeah, each phase would be under its own bond, so the maintenance bond does not begin until the performance has been fully satisfied. So performance is installation of all the landscaping and making sure that everything is on the plans per the approved plans, for everything in the ground for the approved plans. So we do an inspection typically prior to final plat approval that everything has been planted. If it has not been planted, they have the opportunity to go to a performance bond. And that's just to extend that opportunity for them to finish the improvements, but you're bonding that to make sure they actually finish what's on the plans. Before we release a performance bond, we require the placement of a maintenance bond. So that point at which you're approving the installation of landscaping is when the maintenance period would begin.
And forever, I think we had 2 years, and then we just realized that that's a lot to manage. And so before 3, it was 2 for as long as I can remember.
Another question in regards to the fee and lieu limit. is this something we want to have sort of, I'm gonna use the term hard coded, but just having it set at some value? Is it feasible? Would it make more sense to make it something that adjusts with some sort of inflation index or something so that it's not just languishing,
Yeah.
sitting here at the same value for another 6 years before this is revisited at some point, and then we say, oh gosh, that hasn't been adjusted 6 years, you know, we need to change this. So is that something that we could potentially do for wording for that, and so that it's increasing
Certainly a possibility.
annually?
Yeah.
That's, I guess, a question and suggestion. I wasn't sure if it was feasible, and if it is, then it's a suggestion.
Commissioners have questions?
Looking through this on the second page of the adjusted, yellow highlights, section B, existing non-invasive native tree shall be retained to the greatest extent possible. Do we need to put something in there that's, does that, I don't know, that's meant to be within proposed landscaping plans,
Correct, yeah.
not a lot,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried about having something that strongly worded without identifying within landscaping plans. There would be some, you know, somebody reads that and says, oh, I can't cut any trees on my entire lot.
Within the landscape areas, yeah. Yeah, we could certainly have that.
Yes, one of the comments that we got at the email, prior to tonight was, Mr. Stringfellow, how does this amendment affect this property?
Yeah, so, I can show you.
You didn't specify, right?
It's all twisted.
I'll just bring this up on the screen to show this property. So this has been previously implemented with a cottage subdivision, the radio station cottages. But I recall at the time it was a controversial thing, it was excessive. Alright, so this is Mr. Stringfellow's property, this is the designated agricultural land. And here is the Snoqualmie Valley Trail, that's 100 feet in width. And then you can see below that, this additional buffer was required for that cottage subdivision. The situation with it though is that you can also see there's power lines right there. And so when you incorporate those power lines, you can't construct a home under power lines, there's the easement. So when you incorporate that easement, it's up to the point of 100 and, it's either 120 or 130. And so there's the additional 30 feet, the question is that really making a difference? So that's the question for you guys tonight. I guess my opinion as a planner is that there is sufficient buffering because agriculture, there's potential impacts both ways. The impacts from agriculture to adjacent uses are largely protected under the Washington right to farm laws, which essentially mean that you can't bring nuisance claims against existing agriculture. So there's going to be smells, there's going to be sights, sounds, dust, etc. And the right to farm laws in Washington protect the farmer against those claims. Within reason, as long as there's not like some huge life safety issue. The other way is impacts of urban development to the farm. And I mean, there's going to be differences of opinion, but I guess my thought is single-family homes, which is largely, or even multi-family homes, are not a hugely impactful use. Maybe if it were a noisy industrial use that had a lot of light and other things like that, then maybe there's additional buffering need. But this whole area is along residential zoning, and professionally, I don't see that being a very impactful use to agriculture.
You have an issue to the north with Third Street?
On the north side up here,
Yeah, you don't have that 100-foot buffer.
no, that would also apply there under our existing regulations. So that could be more challenging should these properties redevelop. So,
also the tribe's response. So I love these amendments. I think that you did a great job incorporating them. You know, the irrigation was the biggest thing. I'm like, yeah, that would be helpful to add in there, and you did, so I appreciate that. It seemed like a lot of what they were concerned about, you addressed, so yeah, I think that that's great. The, let's see. Yeah, even the landscaping cylinders, you know, they referenced the 18, 18, 70, and I feel like most of that was there, also in 18, 18, 75, so I feel like it's net. The only other thing was they were asking for a definition of, I'm forgetting what it is now, they're asking for a definition, but I was wondering where we even see that in our code.
Yeah, I think that one, we did not engage because it's probably a more time consuming process. And we want to just be able to move this forward, we can come back to that if we feel it's important. But even in their comment letter, they suggested to consult with the tribe on that. They didn't provide a simple drop-in suggested language for it. So it's not something that we had an opportunity to bring to you to move forward at this point.
And our code does already refer to, I think it's the county landscaping standard manual. I don't remember what that is, but.
Suggested native planting guidelines.
Right, exactly. So it seems like that might be the perfect place for. I guess if there's nothing else from the commission at this time, we will open the public hearing to anyone that is online that would wish to speak. And anybody that does wish to speak, you will have 3 minutes to speak, and then you just say your name, you can address anyone.
We don't have anybody besides Cherie online, and my understanding is she's just listening tonight, so definitely probably on this topic. Thank you.
All right, so as we are opening and closing the public hearing at 6:48, and we will turn back to the commission to discuss further and possibly make a motion.
I'm assuming we had an issue with air conditioners and generators out in front of the buildings, those 2 comments, or was that something, the 2 changes that were after that?
Yeah, that was just a suggestion to, because a lot of times the air conditioner gets placed, and that is a last minute or afterthought. And if, especially with multifamily, it kind of sits prominently out front, so it's an opportunity to provide a little bit of screen.
All right, if there's nothing else, does anybody want to take this out of their motion? I'm pretty sure you've had a couple of things that you might want to
All right.
be included. Or you can include in the motion or not include in the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be great to, motion to approve with the modified fee structure. But I don't know what the implications are for that as far as if that would need to be revised and then come back to us before going to.
No, I think we could add some simple language of adjusted annually for inflation from 2025.
Okay.
Can I ask, are you okay with that fee range? Do you want to make sure it stays within what that number still is?
I mean, I guess, starting at 7,000, which was the proposed change for the update, I mean,
And from there,
and then from there, okay, yeah, thank you.
And Commissioner Rivers, you had some language also to
Yeah.
be refined as well.
Yeah, changes to that section 3.
And I have those noted in the minutes as well. Those 2, those are the only 2?
So,
Okay.
I don't know, yeah, motion to approve with those language changes.
Yes, that's fine.
And I'll second.
okay.
Subject to additional, the standard language is subject to additional revisions requested. So, okay, sorry, who was the motion?
Motion. I'll
Second. Great.
Commissioner Lee, do the motion, Commissioner Over, second. And then all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, none opposed.
All right, well, thank you, Chase. successfully through the first phase. Next on to the next.
I know, I thought this was gonna be like a bigger one,
You
but
did such a good job,
I
they
know.
are speechless.
All right, we will move on to item number 5, the introduction for sign regulation amendments, and this is not a public hearing, correct? Right. Correct. Okay. All right, we'll turn it over to Scott to introduce.
Great. Great, hi commissioners, hope you're having a great summer so far. So as Mike stated, we have our intern here tonight, Paige Robin, to help us present the introduction to the sign code. Staff will be working on reviewing the sign code in its entirety and hopefully working with you all to make some common sense amendments to it. So without further ado, we have kind of an introductory presentation for tonight, along with some handout materials that we'll describe later on in the presentation. All of this is intended to orient you and get you thinking about all things that have to do with signs. All right. So this is the agenda for the presentation. In general, we anticipate just introducing the topic, answering some general questions, and providing some resources so that you are as informed as possible for future discussions that will be happening around the sign code. All right, so some background. What is a sign? So this is a quote from our current definition of a sign in the code. Signs generally serve a lot of different purposes. They inform and direct travelers to different points of interest. They help identify community events or businesses or local happenings. They can be put up by anyone, residents, businesses, local or state governments, and other agencies or organizations. So, as you may have guessed, signs can take a lot of different forms. They can be permanent or they can be temporary. They can be freestanding structures or affixed to a building. They can have attention-grabbing features like balloons, neon, digital signs, moving signs. There's also special considerations needed for specific uses and zones that utilize or that have signs in them. So residential signs, this is just to kind of orient you what residential signs typically look like. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. So residential signs for neighborhoods, local events like garage sales or block parties, political signs, or even commemorative events such as a birthday, or I'm sure you've all seen them. My student is on the honor roll kinds of little signs that look
We're
like
gonna
their
crack
yards.
down with our sign regulations for those.
The intent of residential signs is really to inform, whether it's introducing a neighborhood or a local happening that's in the neighborhood. Overall, they tend to be temporary and small for individual users or permanent neighborhood signs for subdivisions or residential developments of some kind. They generally should be treated differently than other kinds of signs. Now we have government agency signs. Government agency signs have a lot more variation than residential signs, but they still are intent on informing or to provide safety or guidance. Government agency signs should have an established uniformity for the sake of continuity and recognition. They also need more flexibility in terms of the frequency of placement and where they are allowed to be placed because they have a specific government associated use. And then commercial signs, everybody's favorite. So commercial signs will have the most diverse variation and are most often where we see creativity or innovation or ideas for new prohibitions. Commercial signs come in many different forms and have a lot more use-specific needs that do need to be accommodated and recognized. So for instance, fast food signage, menu signage. So when you have a drive-up pull through kind of use like a gas station or a car wash or a fast food restaurant, they're going to have some menu signage that's specific to that use. Similarly, you will probably recognize price signs associated with gas stations. What is the cost of gas right now? Or marquee signs for performance or movie theaters. The intent of those commercial signs is to advertise and bring in business. So why are we updating the sign code now? There's a lot of reasons that we're doing this right now. First and foremost, we need to modernize the code. Minor updates were made in 2016, but largely the code has remained the same since about 2006. There are industry differences in terminology around signs and different types of signs that are being established, such as and different signs that are associated with different kinds of development that wasn't as common in 2006. So I'm thinking mixed tenant uses, mixed uses in general, planned areas. So updating your code makes it easier for developers to understand what's allowed as well as residents. Two, it impacts our aesthetic. Signs are both tools of communication, but also extensions of architecture. Signs impact the look and feel of the community. Having too many signs is a blight, but having too few signs allowed hurts businesses. So revisiting our standards around signage strengthens our community vision as a result. Next, it improves our administration of the code. So there are components of our current code that are confusing or challenging to implement, especially from an enforcement perspective. We have a handful of repeat time-coded violators, but have trouble enforcing the code because it lacks teeth. Additionally, we want to include photos in the sign code to help communicate what kinds of signs we're really describing so that there's full transparency across the board. Then we have updates to legal precedent. So Paige is going to get a little bit more into this later on in the slideshow, but essentially we need to better equip our code to reflect recent cases that have happened since 2015. And then finally, wayfinding signage. So a big discussion that's happening with city staff and with some of our other commissions is that we need wayfinding signage in the city. So while the city needs to decide and work with different commissions about what wayfinding signage should look like, it would be great to establish some baseline standards that can be implemented in the interim. Project process. So we are breaking up this amendment into a couple different phases, and it's so that we can accommodate time with you, the planning commission, as well as CED committee to accommodate feedback and ensure that we're all on the same page about what should and shouldn't be regulated, how much should be allowed, where should they be placed, etc. So it's critical that we also divide up this work so that we all have a common understanding of what exactly we're talking about. So the first phase of the project, we will be reviewing with you sign definitions, signs that should be exempt from the code, prohibitions on certain kinds of signs we don't want to see at all in the city, and then how we want to permit and enforce signage in general. Once we have a common understanding and agreements on that, we can move on to the next phase of the project, which is going to get a lot more technical and nitpicky. So design allowances, how many signs we want to allow, how big we want them to be, and what do we want to allow that's going to be on somebody's subject property versus off somebody's subject property. And then what do we want to do with regards to temporary sign allowances, which is where we usually see the most violations for sign code. So we will do some initial presentations on both of these phases separately, have an opportunity for you to comment, have an opportunity for CED to comment, and then we will host a public hearing once we've gone through both phases of this project. So here's just a rough timeline to kind of picture how we're dividing this up. So right now we're doing an introduction with you. Paige and I will be working on a brief business survey to get some feedback from the business community, since sign code amendments are most likely going to impact businesses the most out of everyone in the city. In September, we're hoping to have phase 1 amendments being presented to you just for feedback. And then we're hoping to give this introductory presentation to CED committee. October, we will have a continued discussion of phase 1 and then move on to introducing phase 2. We'll rinse and repeat with CED, beginning with phase 1 and moving into phase 2 in November. And then around then, we're hoping to issue the SEPA on the project, host a hearing with you all, and then move on to adoption with City Council by January or February at the latest. I do want to accommodate some extra time, since design standards might be something that has a little bit more back and forth than definitions and exemptions and prohibitions and permitting. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to Paige to talk about some of the initial research that we've done so far. So as for our initial research, we have three materials that are included in your packets, the first of which is the legal memo, and that's gonna provide some additional detail on the legal precedent and how it relates to North Bend. And our visual guide to sign types is our sign reference guidebook, which also will include associated definitions for your understanding. And the last resource is the comparative sheets, which analyze North Bend's existing prohibited sign types, exempt sign types, definitions, and permitting methods. And these are then compared to the SWOT and Urban. And in our phase one findings concluded that North Bend's existing code is less comprehensive and can better address the implications of recent legal precedent. As for these recent cases, there are two that are most relevant. First is a 2015 Supreme Court case, Reed versus Town of Gilbert, Arizona, which found that sign codes can't apply different rules based on the sign's message or purpose. And it also clarified that under the First Amendment, signs must be regulated content neutral. So signs are, however, able to be regulated by their type. See. And the second relevant case is from 2022. This is the City of Austin v. Reagan National Advertising, which found that sign placement-based regulations are not inherently content-based. Cities may regulate an off-premise signs differently, and distinctions are based on location and message content. All right, further on our findings, the comparison sheets revealed that exempt signs are overly simplified. As of now, only 4 are listed, and all of which are very location specific. So we have the Outlet Mall, Mountain Valley Shopping Center, Historic District, and Recreation Fields at the moment. And any minor sign must be evaluated under the sign code, but many don't require a permit, such as a garage sale or another residential sign type. There were also several signs that were considered to be practical that aren't included in North Bend. So this could include parking area signs, temporary residential signs, or even government signs that are installed for public safety and health. As
Do
for,
you mind if I get a picture of what you guys were presenting?
oh, that's fine, yeah, go ahead.
It's one for the books.
I know. Exactly. As for prohibited signs, we found that our prohibitions list is definitely in line with other cities. However, similar to the exempt signs, they list far more types than we do at the moment. And finally, as for our definitions, we found that some definitions align with adopted definitions elsewhere. So there are also terms or sign types we don't recognize that other cities do, and our terms could be more descriptive. And we also found that some of our definitions include standards, which, as Caitlin described, is like putting a tool into the wrong basket. So I think the example that we had from that is that within the definitions, the pole sign included height standard. Is that correct?
Yep, there's a height minimum associated with the definition, and it is not iterated in the actual standards themselves, only the definition.
Definitely some room for cleanup there. And as far as our questions, we'd like you to be thinking about this stage. What do we want to regulate or prohibit? What should require a permit? What signs should be allowed outright? And what feels like overregulation? And for our next steps, these are the actions to immediately follow. We will start on the phase 1 draft amendments and launch the business survey. As Caitlin mentioned, we'll collect commission and CED feedback, and we'll begin the secret checklist as well. And as for today, we'll be reviewing handouts, asking questions, identifying concerns and priorities, and preparing for the next meeting. August 20th, we'll review phase 1 draft amendments, answer questions again, and discuss recommended changes, take recommendations and make those edits, and prep commission for phase 2. And here, if you're very eager to learn more about signs and their legal precedent, please check out these resources. And, any questions, please?
Are you gonna share the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can
Okay.
share the PowerPoint after today's meeting. We just didn't finish it until Monday.
Perfect, well, thank you so much. So from us, what would you like us to go through the handouts that you've provided, or are you just looking for general questions, or what would you like from us today?
We can keep it fairly light today, so if you had an opportunity to review the materials before the meeting and you have any questions you want to throw out there, feel free to do that. Similarly, if you thought about sign code stuff and anything you want us to consider when doing this first phase of amendments, we're also happy to hear that. If you want to take the materials home and read them and think about them a little bit longer and look at it against the municipal code title 18.20, and then reach out individually to ask some questions, send some thoughts. We're also very receptive to that approach as well.
Alternate commission.
I'll just chime in, if I may, and say, yeah, there's a lot of definitions in here. So I can definitely see the need to clean this up. But one general question on signs, and I guess it's like a portable sign, like what is it on Redmond defined it as, and then they have like the A-frame sign, and it's like the outdoor vendor sign, like the, you know, the A-frame ones that sit on the side of the street. When you talk about like, right, like we could potentially put like regulations on these, like, is that like by location, like where this could be put outside businesses? It's like, I walk a double stroller every day, and there's like certain parts of our downtown area that have thinner sidewalks than others, and a lot of times I have to move a sign, I don't mind doing it, but like, I'm wondering, like, do we have those regulations, or is that like what we're trying to get to at the end of this?
I mean, we have some regulations associated with temporary signs, like an A-frame sign or a sandwich board sign or a portable sign that should be implemented. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily following through on that, because they are portable signs, they can be moved and be in a slightly different location every single day. Yeah, but we don't really have like the teeth or the authority in the code right now to do anything about it, but the most that we can do is warn them and then take the sign away from them and have them pay for it to be returned to them. But, you know, we have a small code enforcement team, we have one person.
Yeah.
I think that considering an alternative compliance approach could be helpful, and I also think spelling out these kinds of placement standards a little bit more explicitly could be very helpful. But also having photos associated with certain types of sign definitions, clarifying what we're really talking about, and then providing, eventually after adopting some regulation updates, handout materials to give the local businesses so that they are totally informed on what's going on.
Okay. And then these new definitions and requirements, whatever we end up doing, like, will all current businesses need to adapt their signage to meet these? Or is this for like if we, let's say like, we get rid of, drive-through signs, we're probably not gonna do that, I guess I'd just said it, but we get rid of a certain type of sign and a certain building has that, like, do they have to all of a sudden change their signage?
No, so what we might want to do as part of the administration and enforcement amendments is consider just having an individual non-conforming sign section that discusses situations like that. So with most non-conforming uses or structures, typically they're allowed to do maintenance and repair on the sign, but they can't replace it like for like. Similarly, there are situations where there might be a sign that's existing, not conforming to the code, but the business changes hands. What do we do then? The maintenance and repair associated with changing out the face of a more costly sign type can be pretty expensive. And how do we accommodate that situation when it comes to the sign code?
Well, that sign would be so interesting, but.
I'm trying to make it, Steve and I are trying really hard to make it a fun conversation.
Cool, thank you for detailing that for me.
That's
I didn't want to actually read all the tables,
Oh, I have one for now.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody wants?
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt going through this. I just, it's a lot. And I've been trying to figure out a way that we can address some of this without going row by row. I mean, because there are questions and or, like hanging statements in most of these rows where we don't have a definition in place, so we're going to have to answer these questions, and I can't think of a better approach of sitting here with everybody and going line by, row by row. Does anybody have any thoughts on how to approach that, or is it just we all go home, make comments, and then come back and then?
I think we could come back with a staff recommendation, and then maybe there's alternatives presented with that. But the staff recommendation will be, this is kind of where we're going. And then you guys can discuss if you disagree with that.
I think your phasing was very smart to go about it that way, because it does break it up a little bit. So then you can give a recommendation, we can digest that. then just the next one. It's good.
And if I, to your point, I actually had the same thought when I first looked at this at home and, I was like, okay, how do we organize this better? And I'm wondering like, so you have like the, this spreadsheet, you have like an exempt signs type, like we make another category where it's like, mobile signs, like, because you have like, we have like a sandwich board and an A-frame and an outdoor vendor, those are all the same signs, like, can we bucket them differently and like just like reorganize the chart so that we can have like a understanding that these are the signs that are physically on business, so these are the ones that are on light posts and, traffic signs, so that was my recommendation, just to kind of like add another category that we can filter through and kind of bucket them a little bit differently.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that and send an updated copy to everybody, when we finish putting that together. Just so that it's a little bit more digestible. So you can organize it by residential, government agency, organization, and then commercial, just in generalities though. Because there are some situations where some of these signs are gonna fall into multiple buckets. It's kind of like when a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't a square kind of situation with these definitions as well. So
Yeah.
I think kind of spreading a wide net, seeing what feels good, seeing what we all agree on, and then kind of whittling down from there when it comes to proposed amendments will be the best strategy. Less is more with the sign code, but also starting with more and narrowing it would be helpful.
I can say right off the bat, A-frame sign and sandwich sign are the same thing.
Yeah,
There's a lot of duplicity.
there are some definitions that are duplicative of one another. Again, it's a square or rectangle situation. So finding a term that feels comprehensive of what we're really talking about is the name of the game with that.
But even to your point, Commissioner Fitzgerald, temporary signs is going to be a thing and a lot of stuff will fit into temporary sign.
Yeah.
So that will help a lot also. Are there other thoughts and then there's a couple things. First. So I love that you're doing the business survey. I think that that's just so important since we are a small community. I think that's great for you to, talk to them before we go forward. I think the council will appreciate that as well. Especially, it's we're looking at this from the land use perspective, but that's part of our land use, our businesses. I didn't see anything with electronic signs, so I would definitely recommend doing electronic signs because they've been around for a long time, and just because we don't have a lot of them doesn't mean that there won't be businesses that want them. Let's see, one question, so we have some historic signs that are a draw for people to even come into our city. And so I guess that's the question, where are those conforming? If they are not conforming, is a non-conforming sign the same thing as a historic sign? Do we want to look at those differently, especially in our downtown district?
I love that question. In my short stint working at Issaquah, they have a landmark sign program for situations like that. So you may have seen the, what was it? The XXX burger sign. Historic sign has been there for 50+ years. It's something that is a distinguished visual characteristic of downtown. And there's a lot of vested community interest in preserving that sign. So Burger Master's going into that spot right now. I believe they are going to be allowed to keep the sign and change the name on it to retain that historical character. So I'm sure you're mostly talking about the Tweed sign.
Yeah.
If there's any others,
Which personally, I hate that sign, but it's so perfect for North Bend, it would be wrong to take it down, but.
To extend on that, we have our North Bend Commercial Landmark District, so that's essentially our downtown from, I think what is it, Moose Lodge? Yeah, the Moose Lodge, and then east to Ballarat. Is it, no, it's not yet Ballarat, it's Maine. And that is our commercial historic landmark district. So any signs within that area are subject to our historic sign standards, which are not actually in this code. And we can wrap them in as a part of this process. But those actually go to King County, to the King County Landmarks Commission for review to make sure they're conforming to the historic character of the district.
If somebody
An
wanted
additional
to,
layer to provide that.
or had one of those signs back, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty cool.
Tyler, that's sure shot, isn't it?
Right.
And then, okay, and I love the cases that you guys put in there, but I'm wondering who's going to law school. Love it.
Yeah,
We pulled those from the American Planning Association website. They have some great resources about recent enough legal things that influence how people should be planning their communities, so that's where we mostly pulled this information from.
I think it's helpful for us to, think about it in those terms where we're thinking about the land use and not content. So, it's great. Yeah, and otherwise they have like little things that we'll get into later.
Yeah, but we realize this is a lot of information that we're throwing at you. We're just trying to set up the conversation that we'll have down the road. And we'll take the time that we need to make sure it feels good, fits our community, and serves us well. If there's no other comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me or Paige if you have anything you want us to keep in mind when we're doing this first touch on amendments.
Thank you so much.
I have a request before we move on to the next agenda item. We need to go back to the landscape standards and get clarification on your recommendation. So if you look at page 7 of the handout that included the updated regulations today, we actually proposed 2 alternatives pertaining to the type 4 landscape. So we're looking for your recommendation on one of those alternatives. The first alternative was to just get rid of the type 4 landscape altogether. And the idea of that was we already have 100 feet of the Snoqualmie Valley Trail and then the additional utility corridor that provides probably about 120 feet of buffering. So we could get rid of the buffer altogether and not worry about it. The second alternative is if we're to keep that buffer and reduce it to 120 feet, then what we need to do is change the language such that that designated agricultural land regulation, the buffer, applies only to privately owned designated agricultural land. Because we don't want to apply the same buffer to Fulgate Farm and Network Farm. It would be pretty impactful.
That map that you showed of the parcel that is what that Stringfellow, is that what it's?
Yes.
I mean, what would the 120 foot buffer look like? Or there's another, not the Snoqualmie Valley Trail parcels.
For the other properties?
Yeah.
North side.
Yeah.
So are you talking about
Yeah, because like
property
that,
here?
yes, that property, like if.
Yeah.
If you're to remove the 150 completely, like, yeah, the Snoqualmie Valley Trail is safe with the concourse, but what would that look like for?
Yeah.
The properties that are there?
So they're 150 feet.
Which is where their houses are now,
So yeah, it's pretty impactful.
So if you were to remove that completely, they could go all the way up to the street essentially, with new development.
New development would be able to develop up to the right-of-way line.
Yeah.
Subject to its own setback requirements. But there's also floodway in there, which would prevent homes from locating that area. So I'll turn on that later also.
In regards to this, I was under the impression that the primary reason for this review of this particular part of the code was to clean up the code.
Yes.
So it, to me, doesn't make sense to, like, alternative 2 doesn't make sense to me because it's not really cleaning up the code, you're just changing some numbers.
Yeah.
So,
That would ultimately be my staff recommendation, would be just get rid of the type 4 landscape buffer, because it's duplicative. Here's the floodway in the dark blue, you can't build any floodway, so homes would not located within that area anyway, along that street. And then along the Snoqualmie Valley Trail, nobody's building in some fine art corridor. And then also in the utility corridor.
You also have to look at the district of those lots to the northeast along the river. Looking at your map here,
Yeah.
it is designated agricultural land.
Yeah, so that would continue to apply down here, but this is already developed, so upon redevelopment, they would lose additional development capacity.
You're talking to the north.
To the north,
Yeah.
there's,
You know,
you talking about up here?
the two right side, that lot that you're on right now,
Okay,
keep going east,
this,
that one, and then one above that. You've got that, those is designated on this map here is designated agricultural,
these here, okay, but not these,
not those.
okay.
So we would,
So
if the buffer's gone, that would affect those lots as well.
These are outside the city limits that are boundary anyway, so
Oh, yeah.
I guess, but
Why did it designate agricultural land outside city limits?
that is a good question.
I'm just looking, yes,
It's something that's been in the code since long before I got here and.
just because he owned it.
Yeah, so the question is, does it serve a purpose? My professional opinion is no, it doesn't serve a purpose beyond the buffering that you get from existing agricultures. So if you can provide a clarification of your recommendation for C alternative 1 or alternative 2.
Does it need to come from the motion?
Yeah, we should clarify the motion because the motion hasn't ceased the motion, okay?
Or do we need it that number? I don't
We
know.
have to, for me, I mean, it will not impact that.
I think we
Well,
could
that's fine.
clarify it, so.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Recommend approval of the landscape regulations in Title 18 as presented. And then
Consider
with
alternative
preference with
To pursue
alternative one, sorry, what, you said
To pursue
to
alternative 1?
pursue.
For me, alternative one was,
And then,
Okay.
on favor.
Just as you went to city council, my question for alternative two, not to change that at all. But you say North Bend, UGA, and agricultural and math, but then on the last page, you take out the UGA.
Okay, yeah, so the word UGA does
Just
not,
get rid of all those.
I guess, the clarification was, I don't think we need it if we're getting rid of it anyway.
Right. So when you bring it to council, will they see both alternatives or will they just see?
They will just receive alternative 1 if that's your recommendation.
Perfect.
So the designated agricultural land, to be clear, will remain because there's other provisions in our code that apply to that. So there's notice on title requirements about when property develops, it's provided on the title to those properties so that new homeowners buying property realize, oh, we are adjacent to agriculture. We should expect to receive dust and noise and the typical impacts from agriculture. So it's just a heads up kind of thing.
Perfect.
so just for the minutes, I did not change the motion in the second. Motion by Commissioner White, second by Bovers, so are we all good there, or do you want to restate it, or you guys all?
Looking to approve it, discuss it.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're all good, I'm good.
yeah.
Okay, so I thought I did too, I don't know, I was like, oh, let's not do another, let's not get more people involved.
I apologize for that diversion, but that's.
Okay, so we will go on to item number 6, our introduction for land use definition and zoning regulation amendments.
All right, yeah, it's, Paige is gonna go ahead and kick us off and then I'll jump in as well. So, Yeah.
Jump right into it. City staff are proposing amendments to North Bend Municipal Code Chapters 1806 definitions and 1810 zoning districts. These changes are intended to clarify land use definitions, respond to recent state legislation, and address various technical updates related to both individual standards. The proposed amendments do not change any zoning designations and are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. They are also not anticipated to result in any environmental, economic, or cultural impacts. A secret determination will be issued on Friday, August 8th, 2025. Key elements of the proposal include updates to comply with Senate Bill 5509, which requires that cities allow childcare facilities in all zones. A new provision implementing House Bill 1757, which permits up to 50% more residential density in existing buildings where multifamily housing is allowed. Adjustments to the neighborhood mixed use NMU zone to allow limited first floor residential building use behind required commercial frontage along North Bend Way, consistent with council interest to allow ground floor through amendments to develop regulations rather than through specific development agreements. Consolidation of tattoo and body piercing studio into the existing personal services category by removing location-specific standards, and additional minor updates to tables 1810-040 and 1810-050 to ensure consistency and clarity across the zoning code. Tonight marks the introduction for these amendments. If the planning commission moves to recommend approval following the upcoming August 20th public hearing, the proposal will move forward to the City Council's Community and Economic Development Committee in September, with council review and potential adoption anticipated in October. Staff recommends that the planning commission recommends approval of the proposed amendments to the City Council. And so I'll move up to Jamie, and she's going to detail some of the key elements that I mentioned earlier.
Great, yeah, so that was just kind of a broad overview. The idea was we don't necessarily need to go page by page, but give some additional clarification. And so starting with the definition section, what we started a few years ago, never finished, page I'll pick up, was in our table of permitted uses, we have a long list of uses. There were not definitions for each of those. So we wanted to match up uses, definitions. So that was a lot of the research and work there. My first clarification was on page 97 of the packet. If anybody has anything before that or any questions off the bat, we can do that first, but otherwise I can dive into highlights.
I don't know, one overall comment that I have is that just there's inconsistent formatting throughout this, incorrect indentations and numbering.
Yes, yes,
Clean
Yes.
that, but
yes, and we did not renumber because if we add one definition or remove one, and so we plan to do that for the next packet, but we just wanted to not worry about that for this first,
cool, yeah.
for this first round, but yes, we'll add that to our to-do. So page 97 of the packet, one thing that we're gonna bring you at the next meeting as well is we wanna clarify the definition of height for a building. And this didn't get in the packet, but we do not need to tie it to base elevation. If you go back to that and B, that is kind of average throughout the property, and it's really a floodplain elevation term. So we want to separate the two, and really height of the building is the vertical distance measured from the average finished grade. And then a lot of the rest of it stays the same. We've added in for properties in the floodplain that we're going to measure from that flood protection lowest floor elevation, so they're not getting dinged for being in a floodplain. And then the other thing we want to add is that when there's properties that are built to the back of the sidewalk on a sloping lot, and we have this come up, that you can measure the height of the building from the grade of the sidewalk. So that's what's important, that's what people are gonna see. So look to height, a definition will kind of be new in the next version that comes out. So page 104 is the definition for personal services, which Paige mentioned. Tattoo parlors, I don't know if everybody knows the history, and I don't even remember all of it, but it was at least 10 years ago, maybe longer. We have some language in our code that specifies where tattoo parlors and body piercing can be. We have one right now, we've had two, and they're in the areas that are allowed, but the question was, can we remove that being called out specifically and just lump it under personal services? So that's one thing to think about, and it shows up later in the permitted use table. So that's another thing. Let's see here, the next item to call out. Just want to make sure I don't forget anything. So So kind of one of the bigger items, again, that page touched on is in the NMU, the neighborhood mixed use, which is the, don't have my glasses on, but the dark blue up and down, thank you, Vanna, up and down North Benway and East North Benway. We are proposing, starting on page 119 of the packet, to add multifamily as allowed and a performance standard, which I'll have to get to, that says, let me find the page for you. So you actually, I think, have it marked. So it's on page 154, and the way we're proposing to read would be, in the NMU zone, new multifamily dwellings are allowed on lots with North Benway frontage when commercial uses are placed along the entire frontage. The first floor residential portion shall not exceed 40% the net area of the lot. We just came up with 40%. What we've heard from council is they don't want the majority to be residential. This also is coming from the Mountain View development agreement that you guys looked at for Little Sullivan Kane. Council recently approved it, but it was a long process where he's going to, where the old Albert Lee is, just down here on North Benway. He's had proposed 2 commercial buildings along the front, and I remember where we ended up, 48, I think, townhomes behind. And so he had to get approval through a development agreement for that, for the first floor. And for these deep lots, what we're hearing in other areas of the NMU as well is it's just not economically feasible to require ground floor across their entire parcels. For commercial, we're just not going to see that. It will just remain how it is what we're hearing from developers and property owners. So.
Sorry, the first one you talked about, that one that got approved, that was more than 40%, wasn't it, for the council?
It may have been.
It may have been. I'll look at that and see. And again, we thought about, should we say a depth? And this is net area, 40% of the net area, so taking out the roads and stuff.
There's a number of ways you can address it.
Yeah.
Percentages of each, so. The percentage helps you when you've got a bigger site in particular, but then council's concerned that you've got some of these big mixed use zones, they didn't want to see it all predominantly residential. So even if you have a little certain frontage, you can still have a lot of residential behind that, so big sites.
Yeah, I'll double check on that one as for comparison, and if that one was more, I guess, again, this is just a first cut and we can get feedback, but our concern was if we open it up too much, that probably we're not gonna get the support. And I still think it'd be nice if you're going down North Benway, it's not just like one row always and kind of that strip deal. It would be nice to get a little bit in at certain points, maybe. And kind of create that energy, but starting point. So that's kind of a bigger one that we want to bring forward. Let's see. Paige, any other big ones to point out? I really think a lot of this was clarifications. Yeah.
There's some additional state requirements that were listed through this, so allowing daycares in all zones.
Yeah.
There's another one about housing.
Yeah,
Co-living.
boarding housing and co-living, yeah. Oh, then another one that again is a state requirement, HB 1757. This shows up on page 150 of the packet. I don't, maybe I'll just read it, that's probably simpler. The maximum residential density established for the underlying zone may be exceeded up to 50% when, than what is permitted in the underlying zone, provided that development is constructed entirely within an existing building envelope in a building within a zone which permits multifamily. Health and safety must be met, so everybody understand, yeah, they're trying to say incentivize infill, and if you have an existing building, density can be increased by 50%. I don't have any ideas of where that could be, I mean.
Yeah.
Be a big
Not a
project.
comment.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of retrofitting, I would think, too, unless it was already residential. An old hotel site, in a city that allows those multifamily to be an example. So that was another one. And yeah, we're kind of doing a catch-all. So if you see anything, or think we missed anything, or have suggestions, let us know. And as Paige said, we'll do a public hearing at the next meeting. From there. Thank you. Yeah.
Timeline wise, is this, like, you're thinking recommendations next?
I think so, I think it's fairly straightforward. So yeah, then we can plan for that and see where it goes.
Are there any specific questions that you guys had today? For this meeting? I was curious, let's see. Oh, for the tattoo, are there any state distance guidelines that we'd have to consider? Right, I know, I mean, in my mind, it's kind of like a hairdresser, like you have to do it in
Yes.
So
their house.
the background story on the previous amendments that provided the specifics. There was folks that felt like tattoo parlors were not an appropriate use in the general DC zone because there's more residents in the neighborhood. It was concerned that a tattoo parlor was inconsistent with that. But since that time, I don't think we've heard concerns about tattoo parlors. And I think the feeling is that it's probably just like a personal service, like a hairdresser or something.
There was also a concern about being close to Norton Elementary, I thought was like one part of it.
Okay.
So it's elementary school.
Yeah.
They might not burn for kids, and tattoo them.
Yeah,
It was a reactionary code that was put in.
yeah.
And a lawsuit and all this other stuff, it was kind of a mess. So we just trying to avoid mess, I mean, one of those things too, as far as enforcement, I mean, it's just difficult.
A question for, let's see, on page 107 of the packet, it specifies this is the category and land uses definition under Montessori.
Yes.
So I'm just curious the difference, Montessori versus public school, why is Montessori called out?
So in the table, it lumps them all together. So if you look at, look at the permitted use table. On page, 134 at the top, land use 4.31 is Montessori / preschool / kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school. So lumped them all together, so we put the definition under M. We could put it under, if it's makes, I don't know, if we should move it to like S and put it under school or education. Okay, but it could be easier to find.
Yeah.
Okay, see, we wouldn't want to rename it, anyway. School, and then we can put Montessori preschool. Okay. That sounds good.
And then I was curious on page 115, does FPC may allow more than this? FPC, in my head, I'm like, wait, IBC?
Form-based code.
Form-based, okay. Thank you.
See the question, 115?
Yeah. Yeah, that helps. It just, as I read it in my
Yes,
head, I was thinking IBC.
sorry, some of these are
No, that makes sense, but.
too shortened for good.
But yeah, I just wanted to ask to make sure that, you
Right.
know, we're not in Florida or something.
Yeah.
So that just to suggest spell out that.
I know it was in the comment here, Form
Oh,
FBC.
Yeah.
Our notes, but we removed, that size limitation in the description of the purpose of the zone, because again, what if we change that in the future, then this will be inconsistent, so. And I do think, the form-based code is what is going to dictate size of buildings and regulate that. So let's just leave it there.
And then out of curiosity, this is just a general question. We have mostly permitted uses. There's only a couple of
Mhm.
conditional uses. What is the process for conditional use? Is it staff review? Does it go to council? Does it?
That's very intentional that we do not have many conditional uses because it's heavy in terms of process. So it requires a staff report with a staff recommendation and recommended conditions that then goes to a hearing, then holds a public hearing and renders a decision. So all of that is time consuming and expensive. So we'd rather just say yes, no.
Okay, so it's a different hearing examiner. It doesn't go through.
Yeah, it's a type 2 approval.
And those are my curiosities for the moment. Anybody else? I love one of your comments, just note to renumber footnotes once all amendments.
Right. Remember for this.
Perfect.
You're just gonna be a rock star on that.
I can't wait.
Don't be loud, morning.
Worse. Well, it's a lot, so thank you so much. And I think that's it. So I think you can adjourn at 7:33.
Great. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You too.